Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Monaco Auto Design, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys how I change the color of cars, but also to create those really cool fades that are becoming a little bit of a trend nowadays. So what you're going to learn today is how to not only change the color, but how to mask a car for a color change, and then also utilizing the hue saturation properties, and then also utilizing layer masks. You are going to want to know how to use layer mask for this. It's not hard. I will show you everything, I promise. Also, how to group everything so your workflow is nice and neat. Got my Starbucks here. I got my Corvette loaded up into Photoshop, and let's do it. I'm gonna try to make this as beginner friendly as possible. So all I did to start out was duplicating your layer. So this is gonna be essentially your color layer where you change colors. And then the layer below it is just your original layer that you're not really gonna touch. So step number one, you have to mask the car. And in my case, I'm gonna use the pen tool right here, or you can just hit the shortcut. The shortcut for that is P. So let's get to masking. Now, if you would like a more in-depth tutorial how to mask a car and change its color, even though that's kind of what we're doing today is changing the color, but we're also introducing fades. I do have another tutorial video on my YouTube. I will link it above right now if you want to go check that out. It's a good prerequisite to this video, although it's not necessary, but it's worthwhile for you to check out. All right, so once you have the car selected, notice I only followed the paint areas. We're just gonna unhide this original layer, make sure we're on our paint layer, and we're gonna hit this layer mask button. You have to have something selected for this to work. So once you have it selected, hit add layer mask, and you'll see that not all of it, but most of it is masked. We still have to do the windows, the headlight, the vents, the emblems, and I think we'll be done. So let's do that really quick. If you go to your paint bucket, make sure your color selection is black, and then also make sure your layer mask is selected just by clicking on it once. If you tap in the selected area, if you fill it with black, it goes away. So essentially what is happening is black can get rid of things like this. It almost looks like it erases it, but it's just masking it. But if you switch it to white, it'll bring it back. So layer masks are a really nice non-destructive way to mask a car. Just in case you make a mistake and you want to go back and add something, it's really helpful. Again, switching black, I have this vent selected. I have my paint bucket. This is black. I have my layer mask selected. Boom, done. Now let's do that again. All right, so you'll notice now we have a fully masked version of the Corvette, and now we get into the fun part where we get to change color. So how we're gonna do that is we're gonna use a hue saturation property. So on your right panel here, you'll see this like half circle. It almost looks like one of those like black and white cookies that you get at the grocery store. You wanna click that and go down to hue saturation. Now you'll see in your layers panel, there is a hue saturation property attached to it. So what you're gonna want to do is attach or clip this property to your color layer. So you notice I have it right above my color layer. And what you're gonna wanna do is right click and then hit create clipping mask. Now what that's gonna do is just change the color of the layer that is below it. So since you have that layer masked, it's only gonna change the color of the car. So if I bring back my original photo, you'll notice that nothing has changed. But if I go to my hue saturation slider, if you go to this slider here and change the hue, you'll notice that our color is now changing. There's two ways you could do this. You could either use this hue slider without this colorized option unchecked, or you can check it. That'll give you a more true representation of the color that's on the wheel. So either one, it really depends on what you're kind of going after. I usually use it, I usually check the colorized option. Sometimes it's not necessary. I'll just suggest to keep it checked for this one. So one thing I did notice is that I missed a couple of areas, especially down here. Let me fix that right now. So going back into clicking on my layer mask, clicking the pen tool, let's select this piece. This is what's good about layer masks, the perfect example of why you want to use it. So being that I accidentally took it away, I'm gonna not bring it back. So make your selection, go to your paint bucket. Since we're bringing something back, we wanna switch it to white, and then make sure your layer mask is selected and click. Boom. And then you'll also notice, if you really wanna get detailed, you'll notice there's like blue reflections like still all in here. There's multiple ways you could get around taking that away. Since the sky is blue, it doesn't look as bad. It almost looks like it's reflecting that. But if you really wanted to get super detailed, it seems like this area is where the paint is being reflected and not the sky. So let's just select this. Those areas are okay. This little area looks like it's reflecting paint. This area maybe too much, I cut in too much, so let's bring a little bit of that back. And I'm making multiple selections. Sorry, I'm making multiple shapes from my pen tool to then make selections from. Making my selection, I'm gonna use a different technique here. So instead of using my paint bucket, I'm gonna use my airbrush. So you could use either one. You can use the paint bucket or you could use the airbrush. In this case, since we have multiple things selected, I'm just gonna use my airbrush. So make sure my white is selected, make sure my layer mask is selected, and since we're bringing stuff back, we wanna use white. So here, over here, and over there. Cool, that's step one essentially, is just changing the color. So now what we wanna do is create the fade effect. So in this case, let's see, what do we wanna fade it from? Let's do like a Nardo gray. So let's go to like the blue. It's a little bit, it's not too saturated, but it's just a little bit. I would typically use a levels property to make this look a little better, but just focusing on the hue saturation properties, I'm just gonna use that for now. So just keep this as simple as possible. So you'll notice that I also grouped these layers. So if you missed that, I'll do it again. So all you have to do is select your color layer and your hue saturation by holding down Command. Or if you're on Windows, I think it's Control, and then right click, and then group from layers. And then you hit OK. Next step is to create another color to fade it to. So we want to duplicate our group here. So you can right click and hit duplicate group. Let's hit OK. So now you'll notice we have two of the same thing, but you can't notice the difference right now because they're both set to that Nardo gray color. So let's fade this. Let's just turn up the saturation here and see what happens. Now we get a little bit of that blue color. How about let's try like a green. So let's do this. Let's play around with these colors a little bit. Cool. All right, so now going back to layer masks, this is very important. To create the fade, you are going to want to create another mask on your second color group. So hit that little square with the hole in it to create your layer mask. So now we still have the original layer that we masked before within this group. So now all we're doing is masking the group. So now we want to go over to our paint bucket and switch that to a gradient tool. Remember how we discussed how black takes things away and then white brings things back, or just keeps them essentially. So what we want to do is select the gradient and just switch that here. Now what we want to do, as long as you have your gradient tool selected and select your layer mask here, you'll notice it's all white. If we click, drag, and let go, there we go, there's our fade. So if we want to make that a little bit more intense, we can like not drag it as far. We can get more of something like that. As long as you're on this layer mask and you have this gradient tool selected, just click and drag in any direction, and you'll notice there's like a fade going on here, and that's what's creating the fade because this layer is on top of our color layer. So I'm not a huge fan of these colors. Let me like make this a little darker. Let's switch this to blue. So now what you can do is you could play with any color you want for your fade, and then if you go back to your original color, you can play with any color you want for this. Just turn up your saturation. You can have a ton of fun with playing with different colors. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I really do appreciate it, and hope you all are doing well, and hopefully you learned something from this video. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer them. Also, feel free to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more videos. As always, follow me on Instagram at Monaco Auto Design, and I'll catch you guys next time. I'm out of coffee.